there are some who are running games on women.
Is she really that desperate?
A lot of times we want to wave the victim flag.
Maybe we think we're strong and we can handle things.
They didn't want any part of a situation like that.
There's nothing wrong with dating anybody who's, whether in prison.
Men, absolutely not.
There are some positive stories.
Ollie on the beat. Yep.
When life calls on you to be every woman and your relationship is called into question, it might be comforting to know, if she were you, what would she do?
Hi, I'm your host Saran, and this is What Would She Do? Today I have with me a longtime friend providing our male perspective. That's Mr. Kenny Rapp Green. Welcome. And I have our relationship expertise coming from Dr. Elizabeth Barkley. All right, the topic of today's show is Love Locked Up. This show is about people who start relationships with people who are incarcerated. So when you hear that topic, I want to go right to you. A lot of women have very strong feelings in the street about not wanting to be involved in a situation like that. However, when I do my research, there's more women getting involved in these types of relationships than men. So what do you think when you hear that?
Well, my first thought, I think that I commend women on being so loyal and loving and caring to individuals, you know, regardless of their inconsistencies with what's going on in the world today. And, you know, it's a beautiful thing. So that's my first thought. But then I think that, you know, wow, is she really that desperate? You know, desperate to just talk with somebody who's locked up in jail. And it's like, wow.
And that has been a general consensus among the people that I spoke with. They felt like you had to be desperate or have a low self-esteem. Dr. Barkley, what are your thoughts about that particular situation?
I think the issue is not whether you're locked up in a prison cell or whether you are in, you know, what your status, your social status is. I think it's all about, are you connecting? And where do you find love? People do some strange things to find that.
Well, just to keep us on task with the topic, the show, if there is someone out there that is in this situation, a lot of times they don't have the support of their family and friends. A lot of people are embarrassed. But the real issue behind this is when I was doing research, a lot of these women, specifically women, because the majority, it's more of us doing that than there are males. However, there's a pattern of relationship abuse, you know, not necessarily abuse within a relationship, but the way they grow up from their childhood. For me, I would not consider that. I don't have a lot of experience with individuals who have been incarcerated. You know, I don't have uncles or brothers, anything that were involved in that, but it seems like women who do have those experiences are more prone to that type of relationship. And I don't think it's one-sided either. I think those women are in need of something as well. Why do you think you would choose, if you are a woman in need of whatever nurture that provides, why would you choose this type of relationship? Why do you think?
It's a captive audience. For the first time, you can control the person. They don't have a choice. They're in a situation where they have to respond to you. And a lot of people who've been lacking that sense of control in their life look for that and are gravitating towards that because it's something they can control, or they can be in control with the person.
Do you control by the person that is incarcerated or by the person who is reaching out to that person? Both
sides of it.
I want this to be helpful to someone who is going through this or considering it, but a lot of these women, you know, the stories that I read about, they are not looking forward to meeting these men. For some women, this is therapeutic for them as well. So when you say control, it really sounds negative, but I agree. It may be controlling in a sense where I don't know if I all the way agree with if control is the right word.
Let's look at another term
Okay.
of how we want to process a woman's life. It's another way to look at it. If I'm in a situation where it seems this man is attractive to me, why is it I'm attracted to him? What are the values in the attraction? Now, there's nothing wrong with dating anybody who's, whether in prison or outside of prison, but what happens to a lot of women that draws them into those situations? It's really where I want to make sure we tap into a woman who may be experiencing this, and maybe she didn't know that that's what's happening to her.
Yeah, and I really don't think that women who get involved in these types of relationships are considering themselves victims.
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
And I'm not an advocate for this at all, but I do think that these outside contact, if you're incarcerated, is very vital to your being able to survive
Absolutely.
on the inside. So in some regard, you know, there are a lot of women who keep in contact with multiple men, and not necessarily that they go into these situations trying to establish a romantic relationship. Sometimes it evolves into that. What are you saying to these ladies? Stay away?
When I interviewed and asked a gentleman that was incarcerated, and he told me his love interest story and the woman he was dating, you know what he said? He said, well, she didn't have to do it. He was free now. He said, she ran for me. She would run errands for me. She would, you know, she brought money for me. She would send me things. I said, but so you had no interest in her in terms of, you know, really wanting to be with her? No, that's standard, he said. He said, that's standard. We get a honey that does our stuff. That doesn't mean that's our woman. So I want to caution women to really search out what, if that's a real relationship that's going to lead into romantic interest, and this gentleman is, and it could be a man dating a woman who's incarcerated.
Definitely.
So let's make sure we touch that. The issue is there are some who are running games on women. It's a system. The prison is a system of survival. And that they have mastered the art of reaching out even into normal community and finding people who are vulnerable, who are not educated and do not understand the real schematic plan of the game that's played.
I get the control part when you speak from the perspective of the inmate needing someone to provide all of this money or errands or whatever it is that they are receiving from this situation. What about the men? Like, there are men who reach out to women who are in prison.
Who want a second chance. There are men who want a second chance at life. And they're very sincere in their search for that. And they feel that if they have a mate that would give them the strength, that would take away some of their life vulnerabilities and issues that maybe led them to incarceration. Now, that's a different perspective that a woman has to look at and ask those vital questions.
Well, what if this is a young lady with a very forgiving heart? People make mistakes. You know, you are, you know, doing your time and doing whatever you need to do to come out if you have the opportunity to come out, because there are situations where women pursue relationships with people who are never coming out. You know, they have life sentences. A lot of these men are on death row, and women do reach out to these men and they do get married, and these men are never going to have the opportunity to start a family with these women or any of those things. So what do you think that is about? I mean, it's the same but a little bit different, because if there's a hope, or in your mind you're thinking one day he's going to come home and all the things that you promise in your letters, that is an opportunity for you. What about these other women who he's not coming home ever? You're never going to have, you know, the quote unquote American dream with this guy. What do you say to those ladies?
The nurturing of a woman as a whole. You know, there's a nurturing individuals, and if they can provide it, and you never know, they might have went through a bad relationship and that guy is there, you know, and they just want to nurture and take care.
You're talking about going to the end of a relationship, and I remember in particular a woman in Texas that had actually committed a heinous crime, went to jail, and she had the male companionship that would come to the jail cell. They got married while she was in prison, and she was sentenced to death.
Yes.
They had a relationship, and he would go and they would have a glass relationship, as we called it. They asked him, well, why would you have a relationship with someone who you know is death row? Because he felt it was a life call to support this woman. So there are people who feel that they are doing a good deed in society by supporting someone who is a long-term life sentence incarceration.
If that is the path that you're going to take, why do you need to be romantically involved or even married to be that support system?
Once a person's mindset has been reprogrammed to think a certain way, think a certain pattern, those choices begin to emerge that are connected with those thoughts.
Okay.
And at times it's very challenging to turn someone around whose schema, as we call it, has been totally changed. And similarly, people who are being victimized, which is the women I like to deal with, more so because we can still break up some of that pattern of why are you doing this if you know it's not good for you.
Well, see, that's my thought. Maybe they don't know.
They don't know. That's where we find out.
That it's not good for them. When you have established a pattern of abusive or one-sided relationships where you're always the nurturing person, you're always the giver and the loving person, sometimes you lose yourself in that and you don't know how to receive love. So if that is where you are in life, this would be an ideal situation.
Sure, it seems ideal. And how can they disconnect from that and get their life back? Because there are a lot of women, more than I found, that are not in there voluntarily. They are victims of that system.
What do you mean, more women who are not in what voluntarily?
There's more women who are victims than are not victims, that are just voluntarily going along with, I do want to date someone in the prison system and I do want a relationship. These are people who have been chosen, set up. There are different things that are done to kind of get their mindset
I don't
prepared.
agree with that.
Yeah, so I've had more women on that end who we have counseled.
I think when you know that you have been scammed or maybe someone was not being honest, then a lot of times we want to wave the victim flag. But I think what that comes from is accountability. You have to be accountable for your own actions.
And that's where we want to talk about that.
I'm really not supportive of people making a mistake and saying I was victimized, because you're giving away your power.
Yeah.
You know, you made a choice. You know, you didn't have to correspond. You didn't have to do any of the things that you did for that person.
Well, I want to take a step back, because there are people who do not realize the psychology of the game of relationships. Imagine getting in your car and driving every Sunday, being a beautiful woman, getting all dolled up to go stand in line and wait for the jail cell to open to let you in. I saw that scene, and I asked her, I said, well, why would you do this? I mean, you seem to be able to communicate. You have so many say, well, he needs me. He needs my support. So there's a sense of loyalty when you enter those type of relationships, and the people who are incarcerated have a way to keep them connected.
Well, I understand that, but when you go into that situation, that is not someone coercing you to do that. You know, so you can't wave the victim flag because you've been wronged in a decision that you made.
Some women make it and some women don't. Some women really don't know. I've interviewed and counseled women who are coming out of what I call vulnerable relationships, and some are genuine victims. So we want to, be careful there, because there are people who, they are nice people. They just simply have a heart to want to help and change people, and that's every personality has a vulnerable point.
Yes, definitely.
And so some of us, we're not schooled in the street. We're not exposed to, nobody ever talked about it. We end up in these situations, and that becomes our life lessons. And I understand about you saying waving the victim flag.
We do
but
that
I want to
too
separate.
often.
Yeah.
I mean, people in general. I do want to take a quick look at some street interviews and hear from a few ladies that I spoke to. So we're going to take a look at that, and we'll be right back to talk about it. Love Locked Up is a scenario where you may have met your significant other while he or she was in prison. So, would you or have you ever met someone and started dating while they were locked up?
No, negative. Stop it.
Ever?
No.
No.
Would you?
No.
Why not?
I feel like that's kind of crazy because there's no way to be provided for.
That wouldn't work for me. I'm gonna tell you why. Okay, we live in a real world where you got bills.
Hello.
You know what I mean? So, my first question, you trying to hook me up with somebody they're incarcerated?
Yes.
What can you do for me?
I really wouldn't get down because I mean, there's nothing y'all can do. He can't take you out to dinner.
So what do you think makes a person who has been through this make that decision to start a relationship with someone in prison? Like, what do you think that is about?
It can be numerous things. Maybe that's the lifestyle that they have.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know. Maybe it's a charity thing or something. I don't know. Maybe they just feel like, you know, they could better them or have an influence.
Okay, that was our street interviews, and we heard from some ladies. So what I got from speaking to not just these ladies, but all the ladies that I talked to, when you start a relationship with someone that is incarcerated, they cannot provide for you. They cannot be the comfort that you need as a woman, the emotional, the mental, the physical support. That is not there. What do you think about what these ladies had to say?
From a mental perspective, but it's got to be mental if you know you conversate, if you're only talking to the person over the phone, if you're communicating. So it has to be some kind of mental aspect.
Well, not necessarily. Like if I piggyback off what you guys mentioned earlier regarding control, maybe you do want to be needed. Like if you, some women need to be needed. And if that is you and you start one of these relationships, that person is dependent upon you to provide whatever they need for commissary, or you know what I'm saying? There is a need there.
If I'm in a relationship with someone incarcerated, and let's say a gentleman approaches me, who would I choose? You know, it's another way to look at it. Would I let go of that? Would I have the capability to even get into a normal relationship?
Well,
so most women who are in those type of situations would not get into a normal relationship because, again, that whole system of captive audience, I have full attention, I can play that, and it's safe for me. They do enter that.
Well, I think it depends on what your requirement is as a man or a woman who has started this relationship with someone who is incarcerated. I think if you are not getting that attention at all from anyone, and you reach out, because these people, when I'm speaking to people, these are the scenarios I've found that people meet. Like, I wonder, how would you meet someone that is incarcerated? There are websites, there are pen pals. There was a situation where one woman was communicating with a man in jail. They were together prior to him being incarcerated. But while he's in there, he has a friend. Could you hook him up with one of your friends?
Wow.
And that woman started that relationship like that, and they went on to have a child. And you know, it just depends. I think it depends on what your requirement is as a woman. I don't think just because you're in that relationship that I think there is something emotionally, maybe even mentally going on that would even make that an option for you if you are a free woman and you are seeking someone who's incarcerated, because there's a lot that you cannot get from that relationship. But whatever it is, I don't think automatically you're not going to choose something else because that relationship is in existence.
Well, I look at it this way. I ask a lot of women, okay, once he comes out, let's say he comes out or she comes out, before you make the decision that this is your mate or this is your partner in life, let's look at it a different way. Are you able to support this person when they come out? Are you going to be the same emotionally available person? Do you think they're going to drain your resources? Do you, those are things that you want to flip it around. And then if you can see yourself, because I think a lot of women, I want to educate them and give them that look at how do I really tap into this to find out, do I need to disconnect from an unhealthy situation I'm in as a result of watching this show or this program? Should I let that go because I didn't consider that? So I like to always flip it around and say, okay, if that relationship is vital to your life, it's going to be a blessing to your life, it's going to help you, if it's part of your journey in life, your path, then you should be able to visualize yourself in it when they come out of prison. And what is the reality going to look like for you?
Well, I think still that depends on what you're getting out of that situation, because I don't want this to be so one-sided, because there are many women who are dating men who are not incarcerated and are providing everything for these men. So I don't think, because if this is where you are anyway, I don't think whether you can support him when he comes home or not is going to make you leave that person alone or not be supportive, because you are establishing, like, if this has turned into a romantic relationship, like you said, women, we are nurturing. We are going to want, whether you're incarcerated or not, we are going to want to take care of you. We are going to want to make sure you are right. And if you were in there saying and making these promises and we were planning and we were building, that is not going to change when you're coming home. So I think if we are talking to someone in that situation, there has to be some way to get to the bottom of what made them seek this type of relationship in the first place, not necessarily focus on the what can I support him and those things.
And I think what I was drawing to is it does help some women to make some decisions, because there might be women out there right now making decisions like what we're discussing. Should I continue this relationship? Is it healthy for me?
Speak to her. What would you say to this young lady?
This is, number one, you want to look at your own physical journey, your need for your life. What is your vision of your life? Where would you like to see it if you haven't even thought about it, considered it? That's the first thing we want to look at for her. And then the second part of that is, can you see yourself outside of that? Because I think a lot of women don't even consider the social implications of dating an ex-convict out here. We're not even talking about the prison system. They still have to go to court. They still have probation officers chasing them. Some of them have chains on their legs. Are you ready to deal with that reality? So for a woman who is in that experience right now and making decisions.
Well, I do want to speak also to the men. I did some interviews, and I like to take a quick look at what the men had to say about starting a relationship with someone who is incarcerated. Let's take a look at that, and we'll be right back.
Love Locked Up is a scenario where you may have met your significant other while he or she was in prison. So, would you, or have you ever met someone and started dating while they were locked up?
In my case, no.
Absolutely not. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've met someone in prison.
Well, do you think there are any benefits at all to dating someone who, I can't really call it dating, but trying to start a relationship with someone who is in prison?
I honestly believe that those are for people who are very insecure. I think it's just maybe a self-esteem issue. You know, you feel like you maybe can't get nobody out and about, so you want to relate to another source.
I would understand if I knew the person before they went to jail. Okay, there'd be a chance, but it's the fact that I met them in jail, it's going to be hard, as in trust, communication, and getting to know each other a little bit better is going to be hard.
Okay, so that was the male perspective on starting a relationship with someone who's incarcerated. And I think the difference in the men and the women had a need to be provided for. These women that I spoke to, so their need wouldn't be fulfilled in starting that kind of relationship. On the other side, the men, absolutely not. They didn't want any part of a situation like that. And it was mentioned communication would be an issue, trust, and the ability to really get to know somebody. What do you think about that stark differences in the need between the men and women regarding this type of relationship?
Well, I think males are more, you know, physical, and they need to see the woman touch and, you know, just have a woman around. And them being locked up, they run the street and go elsewhere.
Right.
So, you know, as far as communication thing, you know, they got mom or sister, you know, but, you know, women locked up, you can't do it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point in the communication piece and what the gentleman said.
Yes.
He said, if I can't communicate, then there's no point. And that is very a male perspective. On the other hand, the females are saying, well, I can communicate. I can keep finding out more and more.
Yes.
And yes, if they can't meet my needs, women these days are pretty much, you know, independent and can meet their own needs.
Definitely.
And so if they find use in the male relationship and they're bonded to that, they may still continue in that relationship, regardless of whether he's providing for them or not. In fact, some women feel very empowered to provide for a man. You know, this is the day of women's empowerment, where they have a lot more liberality to do a lot more, start businesses, own homes, outside of male perspective. And so when a male is in their life that is vulnerable, that is an empowerment tool too for a lot of women.
I mean, vulnerability is attractive.
Not
that vulnerable.
Well, you never know. Some women, this is their take. But you know, my heart goes out to the young girls who are really caught up in these relationships. And I think that is my concern, where they have not really been exposed to life and
I think they need
situated. They need a lot of education, and they get themselves caught up and damaged in some of these relationships. And some of them can lead to victimization and abuse patterns. And you know, interestingly, an expert came to a program that we had, and she said something that has stuck with me all the way through. She said, we found out in our deep research that, number one, the victims know each other, but a woman who stays in a situation where she's being victimized, we found out that even though we try to help them and try to support them, they go back in the situation. We found out that they are more...
Well, that's because you're not getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
I do need to wrap it up here, you guys, but I want to give each of you an opportunity to briefly speak to a woman that is in this situation.
All I can say is just keep an open mind, you know, and don't do nothing you wouldn't want your daughter to do on that aspect.
Okay. Dr. Barkley?
I think it's very important for you to have someone else's voice and perspective involved with yours, particularly if you're young and you have not been exposed to life. You need to sit down, share your feelings, share your ideas with others about the relationships you're in, get their perspective, get their take on it, and then you can have a fuller plan to make a decision for your life. Get educated.
Perfect. All right, I would like to just say to any young woman out there, or if you have someone in your life that is going through this, do what makes you happy. If you are conflicted by your decision to pursue this kind of relationship, seek outside help through the church, whatever resources that may be available to you to make a better choice for your life so that you can live the best life that you can live. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in.